Action.
You ready? Y'all ready?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. How's it going, guys? So we got Results Rewired here. We're going to be transforming your life and career. So myself here, Dustin Gutkowski. I got my co-host with me, Jason Miller and Greg Ivey. I am thrilled to be sitting and sharing the room with these two. These guys are two legends in the business game. Both came up, and I'm going to let them tell you a little bit more about themselves. But look, why we're starting this is we're going to just document our journey. There's a lot of people out there that create, but we just want to document our journey and document the things we've been through on this journey and things that we've gone through that helped us get here. And the reason why is maybe we can speed up your reaction time from where you're at and where you want to go, and maybe guide you, whether it be in life or in business or your entrepreneurial journey. And so first up, I'll let Greg go. Greg, if you could just tell us a little bit about who you are, where you came from.
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. Who I am is, look, I'm from Texas. Been married for 15 years, met my wife in Los Angeles, have a 14-year-old son, have an 11-year-old daughter. So I am starting to deal with the teen years, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
I thought I was cool up until my son turned 14, and now he doesn't want to be around me.
Yeah.
But look, I'm 20 plus years of my career. I was in the fitness industry, and I'm one of the people who started off with a rag and a WD-40 can. I was cleaning the equipment as I was getting a personal training certification. I had a little bit of a stint. I call it a cup of coffee in the NFL. I was a punter, and so I had to figure out something that I needed to do in order to continue to punt footballs, because I knew I was going to make it into the NFL. Now, fast forward 20 years later, from a personal trainer, I won't bore you with all the positions I had along the way. Fitness has been a part of my lifestyle. And so fitness has been a vehicle for me to be able to help others truly become the best version of themselves. And again, why am I here? I truly believe in order to be the best version of yourself, you got to surround yourself with the right people in the right place at the right time. I know you'll hear from Jason here in a second, but I know I've done that here at Results, and the story here is yet to be written.
And so for the people that don't know, you started at 24, right? But I think ironically, let's see, both of you guys actually held the same position at 24 Fitness at different times, right? In different markets? It's the same market.
Same market,
so,
Texas, and then Colorado.
We'll see who's better. But with that if you could talk a little bit about some of the positions you held. Don't go through it all, but what's the highest position you held at 24?
Regional vice president.
Regional vice president. You ran, for people that know, how many employees did you have? How many locations were you running?
Sure. The two different markets. First market was in Los Angeles, 110 locations. So it was LA, Arizona, and Utah.
Oh, wow.
Then had a really good run there. Was asked to come help to support a underperforming market. Now, this is way before Miller had the market. He was performing really well, but it was his predecessor came in
and wrecked it,
messed it all up, and I was called to come, and assemble a team together to help it to perform. And so that market actually had about 70 locations, which consisted of Texas and Colorado.
Oh, nice. And then I think you worked at the Steve Nash Club for a little bit. That was in Canada.
Yes, it's incredible. The founder of 24 Hour Fitness, original owner Mark Mastroff, ran into him. And look, this is after I left 24 Hour Fitness, and he had opportunity to go to Canada. I was almost going to uproot my family, but I was there for almost a year.
Okay.
From there, after that, something kind of fell into my lap, which Mr. Miller over here helped that process take place. Then I was at a company called Fitness Connection, and so I was an SVP there for almost 3 years.
Nice. So some big roles. You're executive VP here. I don't do much with titles. I don't believe titles. Leadership doesn't have a title. Greg's a phenomenal leader, but I would say he pretty much runs our organization on the day-to-day. So thank you for the intro, Greg. He's been with us shortly, but already made a huge impact. So Jason Miller, the man, myth, the legend. We all know your mom worked for Jamie Dimon.
So
I want to start off here, but Jason's story, talk about a little bit about your background. I think what you'll find too is I touch on this is that, look, we all come from different backgrounds, whether it be troubled background, not so great parenting. And then I think Jason's allies, look, he had great parenting, let him tell that, a great family life, but he still managed to find success. So, myself and Greg had some trouble upbringing, trouble past, checkered past, if you will. Jason did not, but yet we all landed in the same place. And so we're going to talk to you a lot about that, is how you're in control with your own destiny. You're in control with what you do and the decisions you make, not your past. And so Jason, the man, the myth, the legend.
Yeah, I was a classic silver spoon guy, right? The dad worked for SMU. Mom worked for JP Morgan Chase, actually Bank One at the time. And I went to private high school, yes, Oak Ridge, private high school. Went to college. I was supposed to go to SMU. That's where I was supposed to go. But my senior year in high school, my dad decided to take the same job in at the University of Wisconsin. So I was furious. I was like, I'm not going up there where it's cold and snowy. I'm not going to do that. So I went to Texas Tech. Proceeded to drop out of college after a couple years. My parents did not like that, man. They were super upset. But I dropped out of college to get in the health club business. Started working for Gold's Gym. Gold's Gym was purchased by 24 Fitness in the early 90s. No one had heard of 24 Fitness at the time. Like, no one had heard of them, right? They were this company from California. And, man, I spent the next 17 years at 2-4. GM, district manager, became a regional VP. Originally, I had Dallas and Florida, and then I got all of Texas. Did that for about 5 years. In my last year, the company was attempting to do a private equity deal. It fell through, and you can read about all this stuff, right? I think there were 22 executives that got let go. I made the first cut, so I thought I was good to go, and then 90 days later, the hatchet came. And so at 40 years old, had to reboot my entire life, man. Like, really, I'd had one job my entire life for 17 years, and 40 years old, it was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? My daughter was in high school, so I didn't want to uproot her. My wife was happy where we lived, and so I made the decision to stay in Texas and worked for a company called Texas Family Fitness. That's where you and I got to work very closely together. Spent 3 years there. Great little organization. Much love to Trevor Rogers. That guy was a rock star. So spent 3 years there, and then after that, the company sold to a private equity. I didn't see eye to eye with that group, and so after that, Jeremy Dupe called me. Jeremy Dupe with Fitness Connection, and I jumped over to Fitness Connection. Spent 3 years there. That company sold to private equity for $375 million. That was a good deal. That was a great deal. That was an incredible experience. And after that, man, that's where the fireworks really started to happen. Of course, Dustin had the incredible idea to start his own company and reached out to me, I think just wanting my advice, generally speaking. And I looked at the numbers and thought, oh my God, this is incredible. I would like to be a part of this. And so obviously convinced you to allow me to be a part of that journey. And here we are, almost 4 years later, Results Roofing taking over the planet.
Yeah, so we have in the RR brands, Results Roofing. We have Results Roofing Houston, which is still roofing, but Results Paintless Dent Repair. We have RR Marketing. We have RR Productions. We have a realized, recognized podcast with UFC Kevin Holland, who's an incredible person and doing a lot of things in the business world, just trying to grow. Jason, I just want to ask you a question about your upbringing. So your dad ran the business at SMU, you said, in Wisconsin. Ultimately, your mom was high level at a bank. How long did she work at Chase Bank over the years collectively?
Yeah, so she worked at Bank One, which then became JP Morgan Chase, like 30 plus years.
30 plus years?
Yeah, 30 plus years.
So it's probably a two-part question for you, and Greg, you can chime in at any point, but my thought and my brain goes to, okay, so maybe not typical upbringing for an entrepreneur, right? Typically entrepreneurs you don't see come from that corporate world background. You come from this corporate world background, both parents. How did that play a part in your success maybe at 24 Hour Fitness first? And how do you think that's played a part in your success of being an entrepreneur and being a successful entrepreneur? By the way, we've built a company. We do $30 million plus a year. The company valuation is probably 65 to 75 million. We're just getting started. And that's in less than 4 years. So I'm not saying we're the best to ever do it, anything like that, but we have built a pretty successful company. You have a huge part of that. You're our COO, if for anyone listening. But how has that played a part in first maybe having that structure as a family, your parents in the corporate world at 24 worked your way up, but then also how's that helped you as being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so having corporate America parents. I remember vividly when my mom opened up my first checking account, right? And I had to, I had my allowance, but I had to track. And back in those days, you had to write all your stuff down. It was not all digital like now. So yeah, I had to write down all the money I was spending and balance my checkbook. And so, yeah, all throughout my adult career working for someone else, I always reached out to my parents and got great advice from them, and they were super successful. And so I had one parent, obviously my dad was on the education side, so a lot of what I learned from him is what's taught in school, right? I didn't go get my MBA, but when you work for someone that runs the MBA program, inadvertently, you're going to get what I would call, high caliber education from someone that's in that arena. So I felt like I got an MBA working for my dad. And then in reference to my mom, hey, she spent 30 years in one of the largest financial institutions in the world today. And so, again, virtually everything I went through in my life, business-wise, I would reach out to her. The craziest thing, I remember when 24 Fitness, when Mark Mastroff left 2-4 and they brought in a new CEO, Carl Liebert, I remember reaching out to my mom and going, hey, look, Mark's gone. I was very close to Mark. And they brought in this new guy, an external guy. He's coming from Home Depot. What do I do? And she's like, look, you need to shut up and run the play. There's going to be a faction of folks that are not going to align themselves with the new group. Those people will be gone within 2 or 3 years. And there's going to be another faction of folks that are going to align themselves with the new leadership. Those people have a high level of success. And I can tell you, if I hadn't gotten that advice, I probably wouldn't have made that decision. And because I got that advice, I aligned myself with Carl. And I woke up a few years later getting promoted to RVP. So having parents that came from that arena was incredibly beneficial. And then look, again, everybody's going to have their own opinion, but when it comes to entrepreneurship, I do firmly believe, hey, if you work for someone else and you do a great job and you're the man and you're a top performer, then there's some indication that you're going to be able to be successful on your own. I see a lot of people that jump right into entrepreneurship and they've never done it for someone else. And so if you can't do it for someone else, I don't know how you're going to do it by yourself, because, hey, by yourself, I watched what you went through year one. Hey, there's no one to lean on. When you're an entrepreneur and you're the guy at the top, hey, there's no one else to fall back on. You've got to get it done. And so I think it's a prerequisite to be successful working for someone else in order to give you some level of indication that you're going to be able to do it on your own.
It is. It's different. And Greg, just on you're kind of going through this right now, right? You've been successful everywhere you've been. You've been in multiple locations, and not successful. Like, it's not like you were, you're working the cash register somewhere. There's anything wrong with that. You've had some success in high level organizations over a long period of time. Now you're kind of coming into an entrepreneur world, right? You're running an organization that. How long have you been a roofer now?
3 weeks.
3 weeks. So
drinking from a fire hose. For sure.
Yeah. So what's for you? Just you made this jump. Listen to what Miller said. How's this transition been for you and for anyone out there? Right? I think he was talking about people coming from outside the organization. You're coming from outside your fitness your whole life. Now you're coming into the roofing world. What's that change like for you? Any advice you give to people out there that are thinking about that, making that switch? Like somebody right now, it's probably in the fitness industry. Like, I want to be a roofer. How do you make that switch?
Yeah, about to give a lot of advice out there because it's watch our footsteps. It's interesting and fascinating because you guys all came from the fitness industry. Yeah. And so the fitness industry, what we can be proud of is it really taught business acumen. And being an athlete, there's a lot of things in which you learn from learning grit. What is grit all about? Well, that's transferable skills that you can be very successful here. Competition. Well, what is competition? Well, competition is helping people on your team to be better every single day. Like you're competitive with that. So there's a lot of transferable skills in business as it relates to kind of corporate America. When you look at that, it's like, when I think about a competency that probably makes the most amount of difference, whether you're a corporate America or you're an entrepreneur, and that's emotional intelligence. And when you think about the ability, and I learned a lot of this over the years, and luckily for me, different than Jason, is that I made a lot of mistakes along the way. Jason actually almost had to fire me one time. Made a lot of mistakes along the way, but luckily I never made the same mistake twice. And so it was like you fell forward, but you continue to get better. And what I learned in having the right people around me over the years is, very successful people spend a lot of time on their personal development. You don't learn, how to be a leader necessarily in the day-to-day. Sometimes that can get lost, but it's like, what do you do on your personal time? And so for me, I learned years ago as I watch successful people, what are they doing on a consistent basis? And my saying is follow my footsteps. And so for me, 3 weeks into this, I'm following your footsteps, exactly what you did to start this company 4 years ago. I'm doing that. There's not necessarily a playbook. Sometimes when you create a playbook, you lose authenticity, you lose creativity. And, we had a playbook, in the different companies that I worked for, and that playbook changed every time you got a CEO.
Yeah.
By the time I became an RVP, the 6 years I was there, I think we went through 4 CEOs. And so each time you have a different CEO, you got a different vision, you have different core values, you got a map up on the wall, and you create a different playbook. And so you lose who you are. And when Mark left 24 Fitness, the company lost its identity. They're still looking for their identity. They haven't found it yet. I hope they do at some point. but they've lost it. And so for here, as I transfer, into here for the first 3 weeks, I've always known this, and Miller taught me this years ago, is the answers are always in the field. And so I've been spending 3 weeks in the field with an incredible team. People care tremendously here for one another. It's a company that, hey, when you're an independent contractor, a lot of times it's all about you. Here it's not all about you, it's all about us. And that's why the growth of the company and again, being able to come in here and spend time in the field, this is the most fun I've had. This is the best culture I've been a part of, and that's real.
Well, and two, when I'm pulling up questions, but 10, the vision, I think is so underrated because money doesn't get you where you want to go. Items don't get you where you want to go. They're fun to have, right? Like, people that tend to say money doesn't buy happiness usually don't have it. There's fun in being able to take your family somewhere. There's fun in taking care of your daughter. There's fun in buying nice things, having nice things, living a nice lifestyle, but it doesn't fulfill you. So having a vision is ultimately fulfilling, right? I believe that everybody doesn't have to have a vision, but you have to believe in a vision. And when Mark left 24, like you said, the vision left with him, right? And he has, I think, it goes, leadership matters. And that's one of the things we'll talk about is because he's been successful everywhere he's been. He was a part owner of Sacramento Kings. I think he has Crunch, UFC Gym, UFC Fit. What else does he have? Cowboys Fit.
I think he's got health clubs in like 20 different countries.
That's insane, right? So how is it that he took one of the largest health clubs ever? He exit within 10 to 15 years. They filed for bankruptcy, right? And then now he's taking other health club chains. And I think the funny part was, didn't he buy Crunch out of bankruptcy or close to it? And took it over when it was going bankrupt. I think he did. And now look what it's doing. So leadership does matter, right? And I think it's because he has a vision, and that's what people want to get fulfilled. It's that, you make 100,000 a year, like, what's next? You make 150, okay, what's next? Like, you're chasing this, it's like a dog chasing a car. You don't know what you're going to do with you catch it. But when you have a vision, it gives you something, a bigger purpose than yourself, right? It's why religion is so powerful, why things are so powerful that are bigger than you, because you have to have something bigger than yourself to believe in. And if you don't create that vision, when things happen to you, you get thrown off, right? And it's tough to just chase a promotion or money. One of the things that have you brought up, and it brings it up here, is the importance of emotional intelligence in leadership and its impact on the team performance and organizational success. If you guys want to go, how important is emotional intelligence for you in leadership, and how much does it weigh on your team's performance and the organizational success?
Yeah, I mean, geez, early in my career, that was the repetitive speech that I got on the reason why I was not getting promoted, was the emotional intelligence component. I would react to everything, emotional outbursts, angry, upset. I didn't understand it at first. I mean, it took me a while to really kind of comprehend this. But at the end of the day, the reality is your people are going to feed off of your energy, right? And so inevitably, when you work for a company is going to do certain things that you do not agree with, that you fundamentally have a problem with. And the reality is, if you don't have emotional intelligence and you fly off the handle and you react in a negative way, well, guess what? Your people are going to latch onto that, and they're going to have the same mindset. I just say it's almost like cancer, right? It's like, hey, company does X, you don't agree with it. You fly off the handle, you get upset, you get emotional. Your people see that. Now they're upset, they're emotional. Now you've got this virus, this cancer that's spreading throughout the organization. Now the inverse would be, hey, company does something maybe you don't fundamentally agree with. You don't like the decision the company made. You have emotional intelligence. You think it through. You calm your emotions. Don't let them see you sweat, right? You react in a positive way with your team. You support what the organization is doing because that's what you're supposed to do as a leader. Well, guess what? Because you didn't overreact, because you support the organization, your people are going to do the same, right? So instead of that negative energy going through the organization, guess what? There's now positive energy going through the organization. Now, again, you might go home at night and you might be upset about what the company's doing. You might not agree. And I just say, look, you keep fighting the battle. You keep doing the right thing. You keep supporting the organization. You keep controlling your emotions. Eventually, what's going to happen, you're going to get promoted into a position where, guess what? You get to be the one to make the decision. You get to be the one to do the things that you believe in. But until you get to that point, you have to control your emotions and support whatever your leader or the organization's doing.
Greg, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because Miller could give you a lot of stories about, I blame it on being an athlete. When you're an athlete, you've got a mindset that says, hey, my results will speak for themselves, and results are really important. But what I learned is that when you're, if you're winning and you're having success, but you're not bringing others along with you, it's lonely when you don't have a standing ovation. That's first and foremost. Secondly, it's, as an athlete, I grew up early in my career expecting everyone to run at my speed and work every hour in which I worked. And that's 7 days a week. And with that, you lost the ability to connect with the team. And really, emotional intelligence it teaches you how to be versatile in leadership. First of all, in order to be a great leader, you got to lead yourself first and foremost. I mean, that's when you think about emotional intelligence, you think about self-awareness. So you got to be able to lead yourself. And so leaders that lead themselves, they typically have an early morning routine, whether it's personal development, whether it's working out, whether it's getting into the code plunge. Like there's a consistent routine. And why that routine is important, because your responsibility is you got to show up for others. Yeah. Having emotional intelligence, leadership is not about you. Okay, great leaders that develop this is that they take themselves out of the picture. It's about how you show up, not only for your people at your work, your team, but also how you show up at home, how you show up in your community. But I think where the biggest opportunity for those that are listening in is truly like that self-regulation. And what is self-regulation? It's we get emotional triggers, and I call it emotional, the emotional action that takes place because you don't take the time to process with what happens. And so oftentimes where leaders lose their team is when these outbursts take place. And so it's one of those things that there's really building blocks along the way. But again, it starts with leading yourself, being hyper aware of yourself, understanding the affect that you have on others, and taking the time to process information. And I think it took me 5 to 7 years to read Harvard Business Review, to read all the different things. And reading a book is one thing, but the practical application and having people around you to make sure you're aware of it is where, I've been able to surround myself, and that's where I've been able to improve.
It's emotional intelligence is like, I use it, emotional intelligence with your team as a leadership. Maybe as an individual, the consequences are just intensified when you become a leader. People think that, well, when I become a leader, all my problems are going to go away. It's actually not true. They're going to be intensified, right? When you become a leader, the more you add to your team, the more it's going to be intensified. It's like, unfortunately, committing a crime, it's like murder. You could be a good citizen your entire life, never committed a crime, be a caring, give back, but you could commit murder one time and it's over. There's no second chances. And unfortunately, a lot of times with leadership, emotional intelligence, you said, is when you jump off sides, if you use a football term, it's over, right? Your team's never going to forgive you for that. Now, it depends on the weight of it. If it's a speeding ticket, yeah, they might forgive you. But it's something that I think is the downfall of a lot of organizations and leaders is the emotional intelligence. It's not having the fortitude. Now, what I want to ask you to is, what can people do to work on emotional intelligence? What are some things that you could do to ground yourself in? Because I think that's the thing. Okay, great. I hear you guys talking about emotional intelligence. I hear you saying that what it did for you, but what are some things people could work on to help with their emotional intelligence? Whoever wants to go first.
Yeah. Look, it's the age-old saying, if you don't have anything good to say, then don't say it at all, right? So typically what will happen, again, there's going to be something that's going to transpire at work. You're going to get upset. Slow down. Think it through. Don't overreact. If you feel yourself getting upset, if you feel yourself getting angry, maybe now is not a good time to respond, right? And so I always say, look, if I'm heated in the moment and I'm at work, sometimes it's best just to stop, think it through, process it, come back later. It's like anything in a relationship. You get emotional, you say the wrong things, the damage is done. Business is the same thing, right? Something's going on at work, you're heated, you react in that moment, you can't undo what you've done. Slow down, process it, think it through, maybe step away, come back later after you've thought it through. Your reaction's probably going to be better.
Yeah, I think about where you can practice it the most. For those that are married, those that have kids, being at home is where you can practice it the most. And again, I talked earlier, I do recommend reading some books out there. Harvard Business Review has some really good intelligence as it relates to that. But I think about, being a parent, and I think about being a husband, and I think about having a long day going home, and where you're emotionally activated at the highest is there. And so, it's it goes back to the leadership, knowing that, hey, our responsibility as a leader is to be able to show up for others around us. And that's a 24/7 responsibility. And so, as you've had a long day, you go home and you unwind with your family. How are you showing up for your wife? Or is it all about you? How are you showing up for your children? I learned a lot from my son and from my daughter. We have really good communication to where, hey, if they see my attitude is a little bit different, they're like, hey, so you had a long day, haven't you? I'm like, okay. So it helps me to remind me to say, okay, look, it's about myself. So whenever you're emotionally activated, start thinking about, hey, you're thinking about yourself and you're a bit self-centered versus thinking about who your audience is. And so leadership, again, 24/7 responsibility. How we're a leader at home is exactly how we're going to show up, at work. Every single, if you don't have kids, then it goes back to, don't be a person that's watching Netflix at night. Don't be a person, that's listening to whatever radio station's still around, whatever you're listening
Close
to
enough.
in your car,
AM.
in your commute. Be a person that says, look, I'm going to listen to certain podcasts. I'm going to listen to certain personal development tapes. The more you listen to it, the more you're going to be hyper aware. And then in the moments to where you need to have self-regulation, then you've practiced it enough in order to do so.
Yeah, preparation and awareness, right? Preparation of being there. There's that Michael Jordan, he talks about, maybe it's my fault. Maybe I taught you that it's going to be easy. Maybe I showed you that my success didn't come from the early gyms. Maybe I taught you that every shot I took was a game-winning shot. There's the Jordans, the Kobes, they like, I've made that shot 10,000 times, right? I think the preparation for me, I was highly, highly emotional and wildly competitive, which is probably the worst mix you can have, right? And I think when you have to be aware of listening to things is being the awareness, but being prepared for it. Like, okay, when you listen to other people that have gone through, what we've all gone through, doesn't matter background, is that when something can happen, it's like, okay, so what do I do, right? I believe I think kids change you, kids change me. Because if my kid calls me right now, I'm going to answer, right? That's the fact. Like, I'm not going to ignore them. So why is it leadership is no different than parenting? When somebody on your team called you, why wouldn't you answer? Because you don't have that importance in prayer. And for me, that's what the kids did. Like, my kid spills milk, I'm not going to fire him, right? I'm not going to fire him as my kid for him irritating me or calling me. But if he did call me right now, I would answer, right? Like, because he's my kid. Why wouldn't I? And that's how you got to look at leadership. But I think being prepared for those things, right? Like, okay, me and Jason getting a heated argument, me and Greg getting a heated argument. If you don't have anything that you're prepared for, you're going to fly off the handle, maybe say some stupid stuff, right? But if you've listened to the books instead of watching Netflix, you've listened to podcasts when you're driving instead of listening to music, what happens is that you hear other people's story. And it's not that you copy or take what they've done, but you're aware of, man, that's how you should react when that situation comes up. So then you have more tools in the toolbox. You've hit that game-winning shot 10 times. When you see Michael Jordan, final series, he's against the Jazz, and he's going for that game winner, and he crosses up Russell and hits that shot. That wasn't the first time he shot it, right? And had that been the first time he'd ever shot that shot, he's probably a little nervous. He's probably a little anxious. He doesn't know what to do. Maybe he dribbles the ball off his foot because he's practiced that over and over and over. When that situation came, he's like, man, I've seen this too many times. And so that word for me for emotional intelligence was going through those scenarios in my head, listening to podcasts, reading books, listening to books, watching videos on that stuff, on how people react to situations and what situations might come up at different times, and then having kids. And so I think for anyone out there, that is exactly, we talk about that. I think every meeting is like, self-education is being aware, listening to podcasts, listening to books. What should I listen to? Man, Google how to work on emotional intelligence, right? Google books out there. There's a ton of them. The answer is yes. It's not one book's going to change your life. It's the one book that you apply that's going to change your life. You could read one chapter and apply it, and you're going to be better today than you were yesterday, right? So for me, that's the big one.
And being coachable.
It's huge.
Being coachable and not defensive. And so if you can be receptive to coaching and not be of defense, that's a breakthrough with EI.
We touch on this one, and I know both of you guys are fathers. The role of empathy and leadership and building meaningful connections with others. We're talking about entrepreneurship, and we talk about that. We talk about leadership, but that to me is the role of empathy and leadership and building meaningful connections. One, how does empathy play a role? And for anybody out there, how do you maybe coach other leaders on having empathy for their teams?
Yeah, I'll kind of kick this one off. I've taken, I don't know if you guys have taken Gallup Strength Finders. What it does is it identifies your top 5 strengths. And what you want to be able to do is you want to focus on your team's strengths versus their weaknesses or opportunities. But when you take this, there's actually 35 strengths, and then they list them in order. Let's just say empathy is like 34 or 35 for me. So I'll kind of just I'll start with that. And
didn't make the cut.
In my reason or how I justify this always over the years is I was a problem solver. And so oftentimes if it's my children, if it's my wife, if it's people that I'm working with are bringing a problem to me, I'm quickly like, okay, what's the solution? Now, I still believe that. It's still in my fiber. What's the solution for it? Now, what I identified is what I was not doing is active listening, is key to showcasing empathy. Well, what is active listening? Well, active listening is truly being in their shoes as they're giving you what's going on, whatever it may be, your ability to truly hear how they see it versus how I was seeing it is I was seeing it as being the fixer. Like, okay, people are coming to me because I'm the problem solver, I'm not the problem finder, and there's a difference. And so I'm not going to say battled with it. I know it's an opportunity for me. It continues to be an opportunity for me. So it's something that I'm hyper aware of. And look, I miss the mark sometimes. I know it's something that I've got to be great as a leader. Our leaders have got to be great at people, because if they don't come to you and if you don't just showcase active listening, and oftentimes people aren't looking for an answer. Right? No. They're not looking for an answer. My wife will tell you that. They're looking just for somebody to share with what they're going through. And oftentimes I've found if you can just be patient and just listen to them, they're going to find the solution on their own. So that's something I'm still working through.
I get it. Jason?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, put yourself in other people's shoes. That's always what goes through my mind when I'm talking to someone. What is it that they're going through right now that at that moment in time, and did I ever go through a similar type of a scenario? So as an example, right now we have a bunch of young leaders in our organization, and they're struggling to a certain degree with the leadership component, right? And so, for me, I've been in leadership for a long, long time. So sometimes it's fundamentally hard for me to understand, how come they don't get it? How come they're not doing this? How come they're not doing that? Well, again, if I go back in history, if I go back 15, 20 years to when I was a brand new leader, and I put myself in that kind of mindset, it becomes easier to empathize and understand why they're doing or why they're not doing what they need to. If I can just historically go back into my life, at a similar point in time and think what it was like for me, right, and then apply that thought process to them, it's easier for me to understand why they're doing what they're doing or why they're not doing what they're doing. So I think that's the thing that people don't do is, we all look at someone else and judge them, and we're judging them off of our here and now, right? Off of our experiences of where we're at in our life. We fail to understand maybe where they're at in their life and the things that they're going through. And so you have to kind of think about that, right? Try to understand where that person is in their life. My daughter's 24. Right. I laughed earlier when you guys you brought up your kids are teenagers. I remember those days. Right. So I can empathize with what you're going through. I know exactly what you're going through. Right. And so, hey, there might be a situation a week from now where we're really busy at work and we're doing some really important stuff. And maybe, you're going through some stuff with your teenage kids. It'd be easy for me just to, judge you. Hey, how come Greg's not focused today? What's up? Well, my daughter's moved out. She's 24. She's long gone. I'm in a good spot. Well, I need to go back to when my daughter was a teenager and I was going through some crazy stuff, and I need to understand and empathize with what you might be going through in your life. And I just think that's what people fail to do. They fail to really put themselves in the other person's shoes. Therefore, it's hard for them to understand what they're going through. And what ends up happening is you just pass judgment on that person because of where you are in your life, not really seeking to understand where they are in their life.
Yeah, people, different shit affects people differently, right? And just because it didn't affect you, like, it doesn't mean it doesn't affect them. And I don't know what the key trait is in leadership, but I would think empathy is up there because, like with your kid, right? I always wonder this. My kid's 5; he just turned 6, right? And so I try to I try to put myself in his shoes and build him up. Like he's learning, right? It's like, I feel like I have a child. It's like building a Lego with no instructions. You know, you're putting it together and you're hoping it turns out right. And you're trying to apply things. And there's been some different periods where I've said, man, what I'm doing is starting to work. One was I had my wisdom teeth taken out, all four. I had them out Thursday morning. I'm supposed to take off Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I didn't get stitches, but my mouth was bleeding everywhere. And so I woke up Thursday night just gushing blood in the middle of the night. And Connor woke up with me and said, Daddy, you're bleeding. You okay? I said, yeah, I'm okay. It's just, you know, it does that. I had to re-gauze it. And he goes, I wish you would stay home tomorrow from work, but I know you, Daddy, you're not going to because you go work hard for us, and that's what you got to do. Even when you're sick, even when you're tired. I'm like, man, you're 5. You shouldn't understand that, right? Like, but it's that empathy of he just doesn't know, right? He doesn't know what he doesn't know yet. And I try to apply that with the kids, and I'm not putting down other leaders or employees, but it's that same empathy of like, they just don't understand this yet, right? I use Connor again. We started a YouTube channel. He's like, Dad, why don't I have 10,000 subscribers? I'm like, well, you just started it. He's like, well, I want them. I'm like, well, you got to earn it. You got to go out and do this. It's hard work. You can't quit. You got to keep up 2 videos a day. And so he's posting his 2 videos a day. And I had 2 different people tell me, they're like, man, did Connor start like a YouTube? And I'm like, how did you know? And they're like, well, he came to my office and told me to go subscribe to Kicking It with Connor because he had to get his subscribers up. And I'm like, man, he's going door to door. Like he's listening to what I'm telling him. And I try to apply that with the employees of like the empathy of, you know, I've been doing, let's say this for 4 years. I've been doing, you know, 24-hour fitness when I started when I was 18, 19. I've, you know, 20 years almost of experience, 20 plus of world-class leadership. I've learned from some of the best. And we have people on our team that started last week. Right. And they didn't know. And so having empathy is such a key component of, you know, I don't know if it's empathy, maybe self-discipline, you know, confidence, the learning, adaptability. I think there's a lot of words that we could talk about, but I always feel like empathy pays. I don't think in the day-to-day, maybe not as much, but I think long-term you have to have empathy because you're going to have disagreements, right? You're going to have times where a challenge comes up, and if you don't have empathy for somebody or somebody goes through something, then you are going to judge them. And once you judge them, it's a hard place to go back from because it's kind of stuck in your mind. So,
by the way, I have a question. How upset are you going to be when Connor's YouTube channel has more subscribers than our company YouTube channel?
We already said that. First of all, I think Connor's going to have more. I'm going to spend my whole life trying to go, hey, we're going to get viral. And then my freaking 6-year-old's going to go viral on one of his videos. You know what? I'm so happy for him. It's great. It's cool to see. Whether we talk, let's use childhood as an example. My kids will never know what I had to go through, right? I talked to them about what I went through. You know, they asked me, where's your mom? I don't have a mom. Where's your dad? I don't have a dad. They ask those questions like, where's your dad? He didn't love you? And I'm like, damn. And I'm like, no, just, you know, he was different, right? So I try to be open to them with what's going on in my life and not hide it. But they're never going to know the struggles I went through. Being homeless at 14, they're not going to know that. Growing up in a trailer park, they're not going to know those things. But I'm excited for them because I think you can come through my childhood and be successful, but just because you had other opportunities like maybe Connor does that I didn't have, you can still put into that you got to work hard and you got to grind. You got to keep doing it. You got to keep going. And he does, man. And so just the fact that he's posting 2 videos a day, he's literally going door to door asking people to subscribe to his channel. I'm so excited that I hope he does, man, because then it just shows like, look, you can do it. That's all it is. It's just the putting in the work, the hard work. Doesn't matter where you come from, man. You just got to put in the work, and most people won't, man. So I hope he does.
His YouTube channel is going to get so big that we end up having to be an advertiser on his YouTube channel.
Hey, he better give us a deal, though. That's all
exactly.
I know. Hey, that's back rent. That's back rent. Going into that, this is a big, man, balancing work and personal life. And for overall well-being and fulfillment, what's more important to you? I think for anybody in work, I don't think this applies to entrepreneurs. I think this applies for anybody. We came from health club world, 8 to 8 every day, right? Monday through Friday, 8 to 8. Saturday, if you're great, you can work 8 to 2. If you suck, you work an 8 to 5. That was I remember our half days in the fitness club were 8 to 5 on Saturday. That was our half day. Every other day was 8 to 8. And so, balancing work and personal life, work-life balance, and for overall well-being of your fulfillment, which one's better for you? 2 parts. Work and personal life, and maybe just how do you separate that? How do you balance it, if you will? What do you do? Any advice, any personal experience as well?
I'll kind of kick it off. It's because you brought up 24-hour fitness. I recall back, and this is when Mark was the CEO, is I don't ever remember a schedule being put out there for us. Like we worked on average 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week, largely because there was always some sort of contest happening, whether it's Hawaii, whether it's Cabo, whether it's Miami, and those were all really fun. But the culture was winning. The culture was the company. The culture was, if you didn't work, your teammate would check you. I don't ever recall, a boss that I had during that period of time saying, hey, you need to work this type of schedule. So it was the unsaid. Fast forward, as I've been here for 3 weeks and have been out in the field a lot, we don't have a set schedule. People are creating their own schedule. And I'll tell you, this is the same culture. I said it's the best culture. It's the same culture as we had in the early days at 24-Hour Fitness. But we're not creating schedules, but people are working oftentimes 6 days a week, and they're working what we call bell to bell. But what I like and what I've seen, they're also taking the time to make sure they show up for their families. They show up for their friends. They're also taking the time to make sure that they are getting recharged of where they may be. And so I'm seeing that just walking in here 3 weeks into this, which is pretty remarkable. I'll say for me, where I've never knew what burnout was, and when people say that they're burned out, oftentimes it's because there's an imbalance or having harmony with what we call work-life balance. And so in order to have harmony is that you've got to be fulfilled. Like for myself, got a family, 14, 11-year-old, and Jason, as you can remember, activities, cheerleading, all of that is just constant. But again, you've got to be able to work in a company to where I don't miss my kids' activities. I show up and we do our family activities. We still work. I still work quite a bit, but it's those precious moments. And what I've learned is it's not about the quantity of the time that you spend with your family. It's the quality and being present. It goes back to that emotional intelligence is You got to show up. And when you're present, you can show up and you don't miss some of these important events. It affords you to be able to spend time, especially a company that we're growing right now. It affords you the time to be able to do so. Now, if you're on the opposite end, which early in my career I was spending all my time doing the work piece, but there was a void with my family. That's not a healthy place to be. Now I had to I call it, you got to grow through what you go through. And so, there's not a solid foundation at home. You can't have a great working relationship at work. You can't show up and be your best self at work. So again, my advice always is that foundation, you can't have any cracks. That's first and foremost. And then you're able to bring your best self to others around you when you go to work.
I think, and we'll go to Jason, I think it's the best of both. First of all, I think work-life balance is non-existent. You're going to be chasing a mythical creature. I think they'll find Bigfoot before they'll find work-life balance. It's work-life integration, right? And I believe it goes back to the vision. I do this two-part with this, right? When you're not where you want to be, you don't deserve to be at home with your family. And I'll repeat that, is that your job, I would say as a man for me, is to be a protector and a provider, right? And it's provide the best castle and the best opportunity I can for my family. That's what my job is. And when I'm not put them in that situation, I don't deserve to be at home with them, right? I have no reason to be home at 5 o'clock, to be sitting around dwelling. I should do everything in my power to get my family where they need to be and better opportunities. Not saying money just buys that, but it does put them in better situations, better schooling, safer areas, better opportunities, right? I tell Connor turns 15, 16, I'll buy him a business and let's grow that thing together. We're not going to go work for somebody else and learn the business, learn it from me. I'm going to teach you better than they will, right? But to me, it was early on, was like, if you're not where you want to be and your family's suffering, you need to be out there 7 days a week, 8 to 8, 8 to 10, you need to be 12, 14 hours a day to start to create those opportunities. Because look, opportunities out there, it's just not sitting at home on the couch with you. So many people, I've never had an opportunity. It's because the day the opportunity was out there waiting for you, you were at home, right? You got to get out there and go get it. But I do believe it's work-life integration, right? If you start to incorporate your family, whether it be your wife, your husband, your kid, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, incorporate those things. Man, imagine instead of you going home bitching about your day, how work was, you go home and celebrate how work was. You go home and make your wife a part of Results Roofing. Now she feels man, this is what they're doing there. That's incredible. I share that vision because now she's tied into it. Imagine if you come home every day. Oh man, dude, me and Greg got into it. You're like, man, I told Dustin to stay till 6. He left at 5:30. She's gonna be like, I don't like that Dustin guy. I don't like Results Roofing. But if every day we're going home, man, this is what Greg did today. This is what Jason did today. This is what the troops did today. This is what they did. Look what we're building. Look where we're going. Here's where we're at. They're gonna feel a part of that. They're gonna be excited about the journey, and then they're gonna start to understand, man, that's why Greg and Dustin worked till 8 last night. Because look what they're doing for us. And then on the flip side is I think the integration is you got to be able to, the intent, I love what you said, you got to be intentional with you do things with them. If you're just working all this time and you don't take care of your family, you don't buy your family nice things, you don't take them nice places, then what's the benefit of them being gone, right? Or you being gone? They're not rewarding that. And I think at a time is when you get to a certain place, look, when you grow, you hire people that can buy you time as a leader, right? I think the thing I learned was early on, 2 years or 3 years, I didn't take a vacation. Worked 7 days a week. I still work 7 days a week. I didn't take a vacation. And now about every 3 months, I go for 3 to 6 days at a time, right? Work every day, but go to 3 to 6 days at a time. And what allows me to do that now is I've hired people to put them in place that can free up my time a little bit so I'm able to do that. And I think that as a leader and entrepreneur, you start putting people in place that free up your time a little bit so you can go away, right? And then your family's more inclined because, look, let's be realistic. Your family doesn't care that you're at home with them on a Saturday at 2 o'clock and you guys went to Walmart to buy groceries. They don't care about that. But what they do like is, I know for you, Jason, like you bought your daughter a brand new Bronco. I'm pretty sure she's like, oh, you know what? I really wish my dad was there on that Saturday at 2 o'clock.
You're right.
She doesn't care, but she does care for the events, the football games, the cheerleading events, those important milestones that are part of their life you want to show up for and be there and put you in a situation. But I can tell you, like you said early on, you grow through what you go through is, look, there was early on in my life, I missed those with my kids because, especially Connor, because I was working for somebody else and that was part of the thing. I had to miss some milestones to get to where I want to be. Even to today, I've missed Kobe's birthday. Kobe was born on a Friday, unexpectedly. He was born at 9:30 in the morning. By 11 o'clock, I was out on a roof. Literally within an hour and a half of him being born, I was out on a roof. I worked all day Saturday when my wife was in the hospital with him. That was part of what I had to do to get us to where we needed to be, right? Fortunately for me, I thought that would change. We had Gianna, and I was doing the same thing. But I think now I don't have to worry about missing those special moments. I bought that freedom to where I will be able to attend football games, different events. So I believe it's tough. There's no balance. So I think we try to look for balance. It's integration, right? It's integration. Make it a part of, instead of making it two worlds, make it one world. And I think you can really blossom in that type of environment. Jason.
Yeah, I don't know anyone that's successful that doesn't work incredibly long hours. I don't know anyone. Now, again, people are going to say, okay, well, define success. What's success for one person is not success for another person. This always brings in the money thing, right? It's like money is not, the definition of success. Okay, I disagree with that. It's what you do with the money that's different. Hey, at the end of the day, yes, you might be a person that says, I don't want the big house, I don't want the cars, I don't want all that stuff. Okay, but I bet you'd like to pay for your kids to go to college so they're not saddled up with 150 grand in debt. Hey, I bet you'd like to live in a safe neighborhood where your kids can go outside and play. You don't have to worry about them getting hurt, right? So again, I don't know anyone that has not worked incredibly hard to be hyper successful. I'm sure there is someone out there that didn't work that hard that achieved success. I just don't know any of those folks. And then again, I agree with you guys. Look, again, we worked 6 days a week. We'd work late on a Friday. We'd work half a day on a Saturday. And so, yeah, there are other people that might get off early on Friday. They might be home all weekend. Okay, fine. So you got more hours. You got more hours with your family. That doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to be better at being a father or a husband, whatever. Again, I believe it's very simple. It's what you do during that time that matters. Maybe I got less time over the years, right? Maybe I had less hours and days that I was with my daughter or with my wife, but it's the quality of that time that matters. And I think that's where people have it completely confused, right? Somehow in society, in the last, 15, 20 years, people get hung up on this. Again, work-life balance. I need more time with my family. No, you do not. You do not. You need quality time with your family. Hey, there's a lot of people out there that are unemployed and bums that get all the time in the world with their family. I guarantee you that's not productive for their family.
I also think people use that as an excuse. They use, look, I'm not where I want to be. I think your kids they're either fuel for greatness or they're fuel for mediocrity, because you use them as an excuse. Well, I want to spend more time with my family. That's why I wasn't successful. I needed work-life balance. I think it's an excuse. Oh, I have my kids, right? Why can't you do both? You could take on both. And why can't you be great at home and great at work, right? Why can't you spend time at work and spend time with your family? And so, I don't know. I think people use that a lot as an excuse. Well, work-life balance, right? Like, no, man. It's like all of us have been successful at everything we've done. And why? It's because we've had to sacrifice some things per se, right? There's been no true balance, but I think what the balance has been is the and, right? We spend quality time at work and at home, because you can spend a lot of time at work and doesn't mean you're gonna be successful. We've seen that many times. I've seen people work 8 to 8 and they don't do shit during that day. They're busy, they're not productive, right? So it goes both ways. You can spend all day at work and not be successful, all day at home and not be successful. And I think you can't use either as an excuse. You can't use your family as an excuse. Like, well, I was gonna be successful, but my wife wanted me home at 5 o'clock. Come on, man. That doesn't make sense. Well, I want to be successful, but I need to spend time with the kids on the weekend. That doesn't work out either, right? Your kids will love it when you give them more opportunity and you give them nicer things. They are going to love it. And it's going to look, just remember this. This is the thing that I say. It's two ways. It is a privilege, and this is where I think empathy comes in. Your kids didn't ask to be born, right? You brought them in this world. It's your job to provide them other opportunities. It's your job, if your life's not fair, to create it a better opportunity for them. If you were born into a situation that wasn't fair, then make it unfair for your kid or make it fair for your kid. And the same thing with your employees is why I say empathy. They could have worked anywhere in the world and they chose to work here, right? They could have worked anywhere. They could have worked for somebody else. They didn't have to work for us. They could have worked for anywhere else. They chose the RR brands and Results Rewired specifically. And so I take that very serious and I have empathy for that, because they could have went anywhere else. They didn't have to work here. And that's why I know we take that on. We work for them. They don't work for us. And so that's all we got for today. Results Rewired. Look, episode 1, we're going to be dropping more weekly. And so if you ever have any questions, you can reach out to us. We're going to have the website fired up. We're going to have the YouTube fired up. You can reach out to us personally on Instagram, Dustin Gutkowski, Greg Ivey, Jason Miller. But bear with us. First one to come, you're going to see more. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great day.